Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1063 just came out, and this is an absolutely phenomenal start to this arc. The number one thing that I want to talk about here before we get into anything else is just the difference in terms of how Egghead Island as an arc is beginning versus what we are normally used to in terms of, the standard One Piece arc. And I think a lot of this is just a natural byproduct of the fact that we are in the end game of One Piece. We are in the final saga. This is the last major storyline, obviously split up into various arcs, but as far as we know, this is the last saga of One Piece. We're on the home stretch, which means that it is going to be genuinely difficult for there to be a single dull moment for the rest of the series. Because normally when a One Piece arc begins, what we're used to is stepping away from outside world events, getting away from kind of the broader mysteries and broader happenings of the One Piece world, and starting off small and simple with a new cast of characters, people that we know nothing about. We're getting the context of what's going on in a given island, who these new characters are. You can compare to Wano Act 1, where I'm reading figures like, Kiku, Tama, etc. And I loved Wano Act 1. It is actually my favorite of the three Wano acts. But the reality is that it begins very slow. The difference that we're getting with Egghead Island that I'm beginning to realize is that pretty much every character that we meet here, Vegapunk, Bonnie, Sword members right around the corner, like a stone's throw away, Tashigi, Helmeppo, etc., Seraphim Kuma coming in. The characters that we are working with from here, probably through the end of the One Piece story, are going to be characters that we want to meet, characters that we've been wanting to see and get to interact more with for the longest time. The setup section of Egghead Island is not going to be boring, and on top of that, because Oda is trying to move things along and set things up, it seems like the outside world shenanigans aren't relegated to in-between arcs anymore. It seems like that's going to be something that's ongoing at the same time as we're getting the usual Straw Hat storylines at a given arc. So it's almost as though the type of storytelling that we've gotten really used to in terms of One Piece, which is kind of, we're dropped into these little bubbles that are individual islands. We focus on the story, building a self-contained sort of storyline within there, and that's the arc. And in between, we might get drips of what's going on in the outside world or how this affects the broader plot in the future. And then post-arc, during that in-between section, that's when we can really sink our teeth into what else is going on in the outside world. It feels as though those two sides of One Piece are kind of, those barriers or those walls no longer exist. It feels like these two things can now blend together really, really, really well. Because I would not be surprised if, I'm hoping that next chapter Oda continues on with this Blackbeard and Law confrontation, and I wouldn't be surprised if at the same time we're still getting some continued story setup of what's going on inside Egghead Island, which means that we're not gonna have chapters that are not exciting, I suppose, from here on out. There's so often that you hear with One Piece when there may be stretches of chapters that are very, exposition-y or setup-y, and, One Piece fans always have to say, well, this is a setup chapter, the payoff will be worth it, right? I just wonder how much more we're going to be saying things like that for the rest of the story, when it feels like the setup phase within certain arcs is just naturally going to bleed into the bigger picture stuff at the same time, because Oda's trying to bring everything together at once. And so far, I've really liked I've liked the dual nature of the chapters that we've been getting so far. I like the fact that last chapter we got to really have some fun, adventure wonderland playtime inside Vegapunk's lab, and at the same time we're cutting away to the approaching CP0 and Seraphim scenario. So I'm happy with the direction One Piece is going. Even just the cover story plays into this. I was joking a little bit ago in one of my streams that this cover story is, the one that made Katakuri ultimately look like a bit more like Jack the Drought than the Katakuri that we know. So I was like, well, this wasn't a good cover story, but I was not being serious, because this is shaping up to be maybe one of the most, or maybe the most impactful cover stories in the entire series, because the Blackbeard Pirates, specifically Aokiji, in a cover page, Aokiji took out Cracker and took Pudding. That is insane. That is one of the biggest developments in the entire story, and that happened in a cover page. So just looking at this chapter, we got the meat of it really, with Luffy, Bonnie, etc. in the middle section, but the two ends of the sandwich, right? Just the cover page and the last few pages, some insane outside world developments. So I don't know. I think that One Piece is set up for an amazing run of chapters from here on out. Hopefully from here on to the rest of the story, because I'm just like, what island could we go to where not exciting stuff happens, right? Elbaf, we might meet Shanks there. We might meet Blackbeard. There's just nowhere left in the world with the things that are set up that we can't have interesting things happening, right? And Oda seems very willing now to to play the line between focusing on the strats and the outside world at the same time. So all of that aside, I don't actually have that much to say about the Luffy, Bonnie stuff, etc. I mean, it's cool. We get it. Vegapunk's lab, amazing. Can also produce amazing outfits. So many characters are out of a job. Sanji, Kinemon, Vegapunk can do it all, right? Frankie, right? So we get it. Vegapunk's amazing. I love the lab. I love everything that we've been getting of Vegapunk so far. Oda's already adding little bits of mystery surrounding the lab and everything like that. And we see that Bonnie seems to not know what pacifistas are, which is weird, but we get it. We understand that this chapter was important to hammer in how important of an emotional arc this is going to be for Bonnie, right, as a character. So we understand her level of emotional investment here, very clearly established. Good, love that. And I like Bonnie's interactions with the crew so far. She fits in like a glove. Not saying that she's going to be the next Straw Hat or anything like that, but she gets along well with Luffy. I think she plays off well with the current characters that we've got. So, like that. I like Bonnie. The big stuff. I'm not going to say anything too much about the gender bending of law. There was absolutely no reason whatsoever that Oda would choose to do that as the initial showcase of Doc Q's abilities, because Oda could have done anything. He could have shown Law coughing up blood. He could have shown Law like his skin turning red, or his, like his spots coming all over his face or something like that. He could have done a million things, but instead he chose to gender bend Law because it is a purely fan service decision. Oda saw what people are doing online. He was like, let me feed them a little bit today. So purely a fan service decision. One of the weirdest ways to introduce that this is the sick fruit. It doesn't, I don't know if we ever see Doc Q use that in combat ever again, right? So the more important thing that was established is that Haki definitely can counter Devil Fruit abilities. I thought that we would see that as a very rare instance of Haki countering, I guess what you would call hacks Devil Fruit abilities, right? Obviously, Haki counters things straight up like Logia abilities and things like that. I always felt like that made more sense in terms of direct confrontations. The rooftop scenario was the first time when Law failed to teleport Kaido and Big Mom, that it was, I think, clearly established to me that even sort of special effect type abilities don't work when Haki is strong enough. And then this is a really strange scenario to me because countering a disease with Haki, that's like a really new one. I think that sets the tone for what Haki Devil Fruit interactions we can expect for the rest of the story in a very firm way. In that, yeah, like even disease or special effects oriented Devil Fruits, I guess less direct confrontational Devil Fruits, even those can just be canceled out with Haki, which I think is something that was not as clear-cut to me earlier on. I think not as clear-cut to me earlier on where Oda wanted to draw the line with how much Haki counteracts Devil Fruits, right? So, and to be fair, like Law is not even, I can understand Kaido and Big Mom being unaffected by Law's abilities because they're Kaido and Big Mom. They're two of the absolute most monstrous Haki users in history, right? They're freaks of nature, essentially, right? So it makes sense that they would not be affected by, some hacks Devil Fruit ability of Law's. But then on the flip side, Law himself is not known, he's never been built up as a phenomenal Haki user. So what it seemed like is that he just used a standard sort of, concentrated burst of Haki, right? From a not necessarily exceptional top tier Haki user. And even that's enough to just counteract a Devil Fruit. So that's the new norm going forward. That's interesting to see. People were talking in stream about certain questions of like, okay, why was Chinjiao still turned into a toy by Sugar? Things like that. Because you would expect someone like Chinjiao, Conqueror's Haki user, briefly went toe-to-toe with Luffy pre-Gear 4th to be so far above someone like Sugar that the Devil Fruit wouldn't affect him. But I don't know. We'll play it. We'll see how it goes. Oda might be playing it by ear when he decides to have Haki cancel out a Devil Fruit or not. So we'll see that. I love the Devil Fruit abilities that we're getting to see out of the Blackbeard Pirates crew, because they fit matchups so well from what we can tell. Doc Q and the Six Fruit, perfect matchup for Chopper. Perfect matchup, right? The exact matchup for Chopper you'd want to see. It's basically Chopper versus Queen, but I assume better. I assume better. I assume that there's a more interesting set of interactions we're going to get to see out of Chopper versus another doctor who can cause diseases and everything like that. But it is just the perfect matchup for Chopper. So I'm really looking forward to that fight. And then Van Augur being able to teleport. I was talking about this in stream, which is just that Van Augur's teleportation is the best sort of matchup you would want for Sniper versus Sniper, because the idea is that, Usopp as a stationary sniper is going to have to keep track of Van Augur, who's going to be able to teleport around, right? Maybe even be able to teleport his bullets. But Van Augur is going to be able to teleport from spot to spot to spot, and Usopp's going to be trying to keep up. And the one notable aspect of Haki that we saw Usopp bloom in was observation Haki, which will naturally have to play a big role in being able to keep up with someone like Van Augur, so we can expect some more emphasis on observation Haki during that fight. So great matchups there. Burgess still a wild card because it seems like he's half cyborg in some sense. It does seem like Franky seems like a good matchup. He does have the buff fruit, so it's focusing in on raw strength. Franky does often get matched up with very macho opponents who challenge him to straight up strength-based competitions. So Fukuro was first, and then Senor Pink was second. So I think that, Burgess would be a great continuation of that trend. Maybe Sanji, but I'm no longer feeling Sanji versus Burgess. I don't know. This isn't a matchups video. I'm just spitballing here. But the important thing, Law and Blackbeard. Law and Blackbeard. I was not expecting any of this at all. I did not think we would see Law till the end of this arc. I didn't think we'd see Law or Kid for a while. I just thought that we're saying sayonara, they're on their way. We're gonna focus on the Straw Hats for a bit, but we're getting Law back in the story in the best way possible, which is the Blackbeard pirates are bearing down on him, and Blackbeard has been making so many moves recently, capturing Koby, going after Amazon Lily, ending up capturing Koby, picking up Pudding, at Whole Cake Island, while simultaneously hunting down Law for the Road Poneglyph. And you can only assume Law's fruit, which is the most valuable fruit in the world as far as we know. So I don't know, I just love seeing the Blackbeard pirates be so active, right? We saw them just a couple chapters ago, but they're not done yet, right? I love the fact that Oda's really hammering in the fact that Blackbeard is going to be very, very villainous, very, very much so in full-on final, not necessarily final boss, but endgame final pirate villain mode, in that he's going around, like, he's not stopping. He's going around, he's going to go after anybody that seems vulnerable or anybody that seems like he has something that he might want, and just keep picking that off till he is the perfect endgame villain for Luffy. I love seeing the Blackbeard pirates really act more piratey, right, than I think any other pirate fleet or pirate organization that we've seen throughout the entire story so far. So I'm loving seeing this level of action out of them. So Law versus Blackbeard, just a random matchup like that. I think Hancock versus Blackbeard was also something none of us expected. This is great stuff. And Law's crew, of course, sucks. So it's going to be Law versus the Blackbeard Pirates 1v5. You all know that I slander, maybe not all of you know, but I tend to downplay Law's combat abilities quite a bit because I think he's never proven anything significant 1v1. People still talk about him versus Virgo as though that's in any way relevant at this point in the story, is all I'll say. So I don't think that Law, in my opinion, Law has never shown good 1v1 abilities. Next chapter, I might be proven completely wrong, in which case I will, of course, eat my words and say that, you know what? Maybe Law is stronger than I gave him credit for. Maybe next chapter he also gets completely dumpstered. We'll wait and see. But I don't think actually that Oda's going to make Law look that bad in this next upcoming chapter. So I think Law fans actually might be in for a treat. It's hard to say. I think Oda will do one of those things where he makes both characters somewhat look good, but at the end of the day, he's not going to make Blackbeard look bad because Blackbeard is the final villain. So in terms of what could come out of this, Law could be captured. That's a possibility. Road Poneglyph could be taken. That's a possibility. And the most interesting possibility is something that was brought up in the community voice that I want to share with you right now. So the community voice, as a reminder, is the top voted submission from my top tier of patrons. So Spade says, if Blackbeard defeats Law, which he probably will, then the key contributors to the Rocky Port incident will all be gathered. Koby, Blackbeard, and Law, and we'll probably learn about it soon, unless Beppo decides to use his full power. All right. So that's the big thing that's kind of developing here, which is the Rocky Port incident, something that Oda set up so far back that we thought was just an interesting bit of trivia, connecting a few characters way back when, like, oh, Law was responsible for the Rocky Port incident. Oh, Koby was the hero of the Rocky Port incident. Oh, Blackbeard was also tied to this incident. All of it seems to be coming together because Blackbeard's got Koby. Blackbeard's probably about to get Law, or at least we're going to get some information out of Law here. And then all of this, like, we're getting references to Wang Ji again. A lot of people believe that Kid is searching for Wang Ji, the man with flames. A lot of people seem to think that that's the right direction, which means that all of the stuff on the side, Wang Ji, Kid, Blackbeard, Law, Koby, all of it might just be one tangled web that suddenly comes together for some really, really big reason that Oda's been planning for a long time. So I'm extremely excited. I do hope that Law gets captured just so we get those interactions at the very least of Law, Koby, and Blackbeard and find out what happened at that incident that, again, at first I thought it was just a nice little bit of world building that we would never learn anything more about, just some nice little trivia to flesh out, you know, the history and lore of the One Piece world outside of the Straw Hats. But now it seems like it's going to be a very relevant incident that has some key information that we need to learn about. So very excited about that. And the last thing that people mentioned on stream was the idea that through Law, as a doctor who's able to attack vital parts of the human body with his devil fruit ability, we might finally learn why Blackbeard's body is special through, Law's use of the Ope Ope no Mi. So that's one final really interesting bit of information that we could get out of this interaction. So I'm really looking forward to the next One Piece chapters, and I will talk to you all later.